going to call taxes to order. And we're going to go to the tax bill first so we can take public testimony. We can't do the K-12 bill till after the floor because it's not engrossed. And at that time, we'll see it in the correct form. So if we can just start with public testimony on the tax bill, and then after that, if we can do some amendments before we go to the floor, that would be great, but I don't know if we'll get there because I don't know who all is testifying. So with that, we'll take public testimony on the tax bill. If anybody would like to talk to us for or against any provisions or share their thoughts.
Madam Chair, we skip amendments right now. I'd like to compliment the committee as we are.
Well, I don't have mine, Representative Garofalo. No. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Genevieve Plumidor. I'm with Life Science Alley. I know we've been before this committee before, but just as a reminder, we're here representing the state's medical device and biotechnology industries. First of all, I just want to thank you for your continued support of the Angel Investment Tax Credit. By extending the program for 2 years, the program has leveraged many investment dollars to the state in the high technology fields, as it was evidenced in the Department of Revenue's Angel Investment Report to the legislature last year. Life Science Alley has some concerns because we haven't had a chance to hear anything regarding the definitional changes in Article 4, Section 1, which adds to the definition of what a qualified business is researching or developing a proprietary product or process. As you know, each year the credit is used up quite quickly. This year the 12.7 was spoken for by March 3rd. And Life Science Alley believes that this change may have an effect of diluting the effectiveness of the credit and deter from the original intent and documented success of the credit in the high technology fields. High-tech companies in our life science space are endeavors needing massive amounts of capital, as you know, and this credit was originally intended to help those high technology companies overcome the valley of debt, which you've had many testifiers who have come before you this year alone, including one of our members, Promote Hosharon, who had his life-saving technology that he showed the committee regarding the cooling of the heart NervaMed technology. And what Promote testified is that in this very committee that what we hear, this early stage development and in this research stage, it's harder and harder for VCs to make a decision to invest in those high-risk technologies. So that's my one comment on that. And lastly, I would like to just comment on the inclusion of Representative Anderson's House File 1963, extending the R&D tax credit to sole proprietors. We had spoken in support of this, and so we again speak our support of that provision.
Thank you. May I just ask you, and I apologize because I was sort of getting adjusted to the room. No. The objection is, are you talking about the language that was passed in the first tax bill? You're hoping this committee will amend that? Or are you talking about what's in this tax bill 2 that amends tax bill 1?
Correct. So this language is found on 59.34 of the DE that was posted yesterday. So I really would love some clarification too. So that just includes adding another element of a qualified business? Again, we're just concerned because a qualified technology business is what was originally conceived in the bill.
Okay, I'm just going to...
No problem.
Wait, I just want to look it up here. And maybe Ms. Manzi, I don't know if she's in the room even.
And Madam Chair.
Where did that come from? Representative Anderson, yes, please.
I would like some clarification on that too and what that really means. So now we're taking an R&D credit that was originally intended for high tech and giving it to tourism?
Okay. Oh, yes, Ms. Manzi's here, but Representative Simonson, I think, probably wants to talk about this. And Representative Simonson, please.
Madam Chair and members, and I think an explanation by Ms. Manzi would be great when she is here. But in addition to that, I just want to say that what you're seeing here is sort of a compromise, if you will, between the current language, current law, what we passed, what seems like yesterday, and with another bill that was come before the legislature this session that dealt more specifically with Greater Minnesota. And the intent here is to is to try to balance, at least for a period of time, the amount of monies that go to Greater Minnesota, especially in the R&D field. And R&D is not necessarily in Greater Minnesota always going to be specific to high technology. And if you get out into Greater Minnesota, into some of those areas, there are certainly differences. So by bringing in this language, we encourage R&D proprietary product, not only in the high technology field, but in businesses that are important to Greater Minnesota, like agriculture, tourism, forestry, mining, manufacturing, or transportation, not just tourism.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Representative Anderson.
To that point, if Representative Simonson could explain to me, where is their R&D, where is their research and development in tourism?
Madam Chair?
Yes. No, who said that? Was
That was
you?
me.
Oh, Representative Simonson.
Madam Chair and Representative Anderson, I think you find R&D in just about anything, but to these points, this is language that was taken out of, if you look onto the next page well, I'm working off the 1023, but it's the same language that you see on the following page. It's in current law.
Okay, and I should just be clear, I just wanted to understand your testimony, so we're not trying to debate the provisions. This committee is going to do that via amendments and not, but I wanted to understand it. But I think one thing that helps as people think about it, and I think Representative Simonson has expressed it correctly as a sort of, in between sort of two sets of viewpoints around this capital on how this program should work. But if you look at line 59.34, it's researching or developing a proprietary product, process, or service in the list. Now, if there isn't anybody doing any of that, then the angel credit investor couldn't be qualified to receive the tax credit if there's nothing going on in that area. So there has to be someone out there doing something that would qualify to even appeal to the investor. So I don't think we have to worry about that. Representative Anderson.
But the difference is how the language is written on the two segments. Because if that was truly the case, we wouldn't need the language on page 59. But as the language is written here now, it says researching or developing a proprietary product and so forth, or in the field of ag, tourism. So it says that it doesn't have to be research and development for ag, tourism, forestry, and mining. It could be anything under the sun. So it could be, we want to dump more money into Explore Minnesota or whatever, and so we're going to take it from the angel investor credit, which then really kind of defeats the purpose defeats the purpose of the program in the first place, right?
Well, I have been told there is an author's amendment, and I don't know who has it, and I want to apologize to everyone because we really should not be debating this. We're taking public testimony, and certainly Representative Anderson and Simonson can offer amendments on this part of the bill or any other part of the bill when we mark up the bill. But just for some clarification, because that's, I started it because I asked you that. I was trying to figure out where you were going with that. I'm just going to ask Ms. Manzi to jump in a little bit here and do some clarifying, but I understand there's an author's amendment that addresses a drafting issue with that. Ms. Manzi.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Department of Revenue staff raised this same concern with us. It was not the intent of Representative Simonson, who I worked on this language with, to allow this for any activities in agriculture and then the remaining fields that are listed there. So the author's amendment will be redrawing this. Let me see. So that little clauses 1, 2, and 3 will remain as they are in current law. Actually, 3 will become 4, and the new 3 will read, researching or developing a proprietary product, process, or service in the fields of agriculture, tourism, forestry, mining, manufacturing, or transportation. So it will be expanding the things that you can do in those fields to not just researching or developing a proprietary technology, but also to researching or developing a proprietary product, process, or service. So the technology is allowed in those fields under current law, and then this will be allowing it for researching or developing a proprietary product, process, or service as well. So the proprietary requirement will still be there, and the research and development requirement will still be there.
Okay, and I want to, again, and Representative Anderson, to you as well, this author's amendment, I have been told, is my amendment. Well, that sounds funny to the public. This is exactly why we have this excellent folks in the Department of Revenue and nonpartisan staff to read page and line and find these pieces that Representative Anderson, I really understand where she's coming from now. I understand the testimony, but I think we're now hearing that won't have the effect people thought it was once the amendment comes. And so I will offer that. We'll get that out there. But even if that still doesn't address people's concerns, every member of this committee can offer amendments and ask for roll calls and see how things play out. So, okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further testimony.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, Chuck
Carnival.
Carnival, representing the Minnesota High Tech Association. I jumped up because I'm in the same position as the previous witness. We were concerned about the same provision and its effect on broadening the scope of the tax credit beyond what was the original intent of it. So with that clarifying amendment, so long as there's research and development and it's a technology-related activity, we're okay with that. I also just wanted to mention on the prior issue that you mentioned with respect to the changes that were made in the first tax bill, we did have some concern about the broadening of the scope of the availability of that tax credit statewide because it has been so oversubscribed, and secondly, the limitation on who can take advantage of it, since most of the people who might be excluded from taking advantage of it are the natural folks who would be the investors at the early part and risk their capital. There'll be a witness later on, I believe, from the angel investor community who will speak to that issue as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for your testimony. Further testimony on the omnibus tax bill. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Nan Madden. I'm director of the Minnesota Budget Project. Just wanted to thank you for the provisions in the omnibus tax bill that provide one-time property tax reductions for low and moderate income Minnesotans through the renter's credit and circuit breaker. In particular, the renter's credit reaches more than 300,000 low and moderate income renters all across the state whose property taxes are high in relation to their incomes. You've heard how the renter's credit is effective in limiting how much these Minnesotans pay in property taxes, but low and moderate income Minnesotans have felt the impact of a 13% cut to the renter's credit made in 2011. Last year's tax bill made some important improvements to the renter's credit, and we thank you for taking an additional step this year for an additional one-time property tax reduction for all Minnesota renters who qualify for the renter's credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Madden. Welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Eric Hauge. I'm with Homeline. I'm an organizer with Homeline. Homeline is a nonprofit organization that provides free tenant advocacy services to renters across the state. Our primary service is a free tenant hotline that renters can call and get legal advice about their rights. Because of the nature of our hotline, we learn a lot about the issues and trends affecting renters, and it provides opportunities to work one-on-one with tenants on policy issues. The renter's credit property tax refund is one of the top priorities for the folks that we serve. Thank you for including a 6% increase in the renter's credit in the omnibus tax bill. As Nan mentioned, the credit's targeted to households that are most at need of property tax relief. As you may know, the rental market in the Twin Cities is extremely tight right now. Apartment vacancy rate of 5% is generally considered an equilibrium point. It's been reported that it's been less than 3% vacancy rate for nearly 3 years. This has resulted in landlords' market where rent increases are the norm every year. Average rent in the Twin Cities has increased about 8.5% in the last 3 years. We haven't seen something like that since the late 90s. Needless to say, renters are facing a difficult time while other costs of living are increasing too. Many folks, especially seniors and people with disabilities, are on fixed incomes and are having difficulty making ends meet. And that's really where the renter's credit comes in. It makes a real difference in people's lives when they receive that credit every year. Every year around about this time is when they're applying and we start hearing stories from renters about the types of things they spend it on. The refund is timed perfectly for families with kids. It comes in mid to late August when everyone is preparing for the start of school. It's not uncommon that refunds go directly towards clothes and school supplies for the new school year, as well as child care for siblings who aren't off to school yet. I've organized renters for about 11 years, and the one thing I've heard consistently is that the refund goes towards basic needs. It's almost exclusively spent within the nearby community on items that we all take for granted. I hear from seniors who spend their refunds on out-of-pocket prescription costs and other important medicines. Eyewear and dental expenses not covered by insurance. Winter boots and other seasonal clothing needs. Maintenance and upkeep on automobiles or other transportation costs like Metro Mobility, especially for seniors to get them mobile into their doctor. Stocking up on groceries for the winter, and just generally catching up on overall household expenses. Just yesterday, I talked to a few renters. I talked to Debbie from Minneapolis, who's excited about the potential of getting an increase. Her credit goes towards hearing aid batteries that her medical assistants can only pay a certain amount towards. And lastly, Nora from Eden Prairie I talked to. Her money goes towards rent increases that she sees every year and to pay for medications. She recently had open heart surgery, so a good amount of her credit goes towards the price of drugs. I appreciate the time to address the committee, and thank you very much for the increase.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hauge. Thank you. Further testimony on the omnibus tax bill. Yes, please, Representative Loon.
Just a quick question while testifiers come in. Could you have maybe research staff remind me of what the income levels are for the renter's credit for people to qualify?
I don't see Mr. Hines is there. He's pointing over to her. No, now she smiled. Ms. Manzi's here. You want to join us just at the table there? Thank you, Ms. Cadoon. If you can remind the committee what the income limits are for the renter's credit.
Madam Chair, Representative Loon, I don't have that one committed to memory since it gets adjusted for inflation each year. I believe it's around $58,000 for the current filing year. And do not have a piece of paper right here that tells me that, but I can give that to you more precisely later if you'd like, but it's right around $58,000.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ballpark is fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Ready?
Please, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Joel Carlson. I'm here on behalf of a number of groups that I represent that are seasonal commercial lakeshore businesses. And I want to talk specifically about Article 2, Section 9 of the property tax section. The seasonal recreational property tax classifications that you have in the bill reflect more not a decision of the legislature, but a decision of the assessors that is required to assess property at their highest and best use. And lakeshore property is extremely valuable in Minnesota, and that's not a bad thing. But for seasonal property, commercial property owners, of which less than 2% of the lakeshore in Minnesota is dedicated to commercial use, for those properties to be assessed at their highest and best use, which is often to break them up and sell them as individual private developments for homes, to pay that highest and best use tax on a full commercial rate makes it difficult, if not impossible, for many of them to remain in business. And to give you an example, just in the resort area, in 1974, Minnesota had over 3,000 resorts. We are down now to about 900. And when your land value becomes greater than the value of your business as a going concern, they end up being sold. And those resorts and that lakeshore property and the marinas that are affected by this property tax provision are the ways that Minnesotans access our natural resources. And the policy decision of the legislature to help those businesses with this assessing problem by developing a tiered system of property taxation so that in their 3 and 4 month window of business when they are open, they can afford to stay in business and not pay full commercial rates is critical for them. And I would urge you to move cautiously in that area, whether it's a seasonal restaurant. And we had a little discussion about this in committee. They are not in competition with McDonald's. If you read the language of the bill, these are seasonal businesses. They're open 250 days a year or less. Or they derive 60% of their income during a short period of time. They are not in competition with the restaurant in town. And if you ask the people in town and the legislators who've supported these provisions, the communities will tell you that the negligible shift of property tax burden, which is negligible, you can't measure it, is supported by the community. They want these amenities, they want these businesses, they want these jobs. And this provision is going to make it extremely difficult for them to remain in business. And lastly, Madam Chair and members, I feel bad that in my testimony in the property tax division, that I didn't appear sufficiently pitiful as the Minneapolis Club or Representative David's inns in his district, because they're no longer in the bill, and so now we're focused on seasonal restaurants.
You didn't just say Representative Davis was sufficiently pitiful, did you? Representative Davis?
I didn't appear that way.
Representative Davis?
I'll wait.
So there, in fact, after we created the seasonal recreational tiered system, Representative Davids for years tried to get his businesses into the creation of the seasonal rec. He gets to stay in, and now my clients are out. That's unfair. Madam Chair, in all seriousness, this will have a significant impact on the tax rates for a few number of businesses that may make it very difficult for them to remain in business, and I hope you seriously consider that. The legislature's been great in promoting tourism and recreational opportunities. This takes us in the wrong direction, and I hope you'll consider not moving forward with that provision. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Representative Davids.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I do want to thank Representative Dabney for the 4C in issue, taking care of that. But when we were having our little discussion yesterday, I was thinking that, well, he must have taken care of 4C because, and I do thank him for the in issue, but if you look at Section 9 there, Class 4C 7 and 8, Class 4C 9, Class 4C 10, Class 4C 11, those are all troubling, and I agree with everything the witness has said here, except the pathetic thing, or what was that he said?
Pitiful.
Pitiful.
Sufficiently pitiful.
Sufficiently pitiful. But if you look at 4C9, I've just been in contact with some folks from Lanesboro, which is designated by this legislature as the bed and breakfast capital of Minnesota. We're trying to figure out how many of the bed and breakfasts would be put out of business with this provision. So I have a question maybe for Mr. Carlson or some staff. If you look at the 4C9, owner-occupied bed and breakfast, how much would their property taxes go up? Would it be doubled or tripled? I mean, these folks are actually running on a pretty slim margin the way it is, and I'm sure many people around this table have enjoyed the bed and breakfast in Lanesboro and Preston and Harmony. Who could...
Is Mr. Hines still in the room?
No, Mr. Hines is up drafting an amendment to eliminate these provisions.
Or Mr. Michael, or
maybe Mr. Carlson.
Mr. Carlson, did you want to...
Just on the back of the napkin kind of calculation, Representative Davids, you're talking about a tiered rate. So on their first $500,000 of value, they are taxed at 0.05%. And then by the time they get to the full value of their property, they're taxed at 1.5%. If you're moving them now to full commercial at 3%, you are at least doubling, if not more, of their tax burden. And the property taxes that many seasonal commercial businesses pay, and bed and breakfast, is their largest operating expense. That is their largest expense, and we have an opportunity here to at least double it, if not more.
Well, Madam Chair, if the rate, and most of mine would probably be valued under $500,000, the folks I represent, so if it's at 0.5 and it goes to 3.0, wouldn't that be 6 times as much?
Depending on their valuation. That's the whole purpose of the tiered approach, is to hold down that tax rate on the first part of your value. That's the whole point of trying to address these, seasonal and part-time businesses in that fashion.
Well, Madam Chair, Mr. Carlson, let me get this right. Let's say there's a bed and breakfast in Lanesboro at $350,000. They'd be going from 0.5 to 3.0. Is that what we're saying?
I don't know any other way to read the proposal.
Okay, members, I hope you're listening to this. This is something that we really don't have to be doing. I would think of some Ansell's district up there, especially with some of the resort things, and my amendment would also take care of 4C11, Majority Leader's box provision that he's concerned about there. So just think about what we're doing. If we're going to take a little bed and breakfast, a small family business in Lanesboro, Minnesota, or Preston, or Harmony, and we're going to raise their property taxes by 6 times, that does put them out of business. And the folks in Lanesboro, as we speak, are meeting and visiting and talking about this. And so I gave Representative Dabney's number and Chair Lenczewski's number, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from them. And of course, that could all be taken care of with supporting my amendment later on here. But let's please think about what we're doing here. Raising property tax by 6 times. And I mean, Grand Rapids has some beautiful facilities up there, and I certainly don't want to do that to the folks in Grand Rapids either. So, Mr. Carlson, I'm usually not supporting your positions, but I think you're right on this one. Don't you represent the trial attorneys too, or something?
Well,
something like that.
No opinions on the news.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Loeffler.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And as long as we're discussing the impact of property taxes on small business, I think it's important to recognize, and I'm not sure that that's been factored into some of the numbers that have been thrown around here, that in our property tax bill, we actually lower the statewide levy, and so that businesses whose value is under $1,070,000, which I think is the types of business that I've been hearing people describing here, are going to get tax relief. Of course, the most significant is for the smaller ones, for the mom and pops that you're describing. They're going to get an even better tax break than those that are closer to $1 million. And so I think we have actually helped these small businesses in a variety of different ways. We need to balance that out.
Thank you. I really don't want to debate the bill right now, if possible. I would like to go to further public testimony.
Thank you, Madam
Okay.
Chair and members.
Thank you. So, because we're gonna revisit all this and all the amendments. That's obvious to me. So, Ms. Kadoon.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Beth Kadoum, and I represent the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. I first do want to thank you for including some provisions like the R&D credit, expanding that to sole proprietors. I think that's a good step forward to make sure we can help encourage more R&D in the state of Minnesota. Also appreciate the inclusion of just some of the cleanup language like the digital audio works for sales tax. Do have concerns, and my concern was what Representative Loeffler was just talking about, and maybe I misread the bill, but I did not see that we're actually lowering the levy for the statewide property tax. My understanding is that it's actually a shift of the $80 million among the statewide levy. Yeah. Is that correct? Okay, so the concern I have is that you are shifting $80 million of the statewide levy with the CI change that's occurring. This will create winners and losers among business properties. Some of them will, the winners, some might be in the small business community, but some of the losers will be small businesses as well, because a lot of those properties are in larger property valued buildings. So there will be a lot of shifting. $80 million is about 10% of the total statewide levy. So this might be a substantial shifting that we are seeing. If you're really looking to lower small business taxes as well as other business property taxes, the better approach would be then to actually lower the statewide general levy. That would actually provide tax relief to all businesses in the state of Minnesota. And I would also mention some concerns that Joel Carlson said as well regarding just those class rate changes. That will be a shock to many of those businesses. Great tax increases to those businesses that are impacted. When the state before has made policy changes on the class rate system, because of all the shifting that occurs, typically you try to have then other mitigating factors to help minimize the impact to those properties that are being impacted. So with that, thank you. One other point I did want to make on is we also have concerns regarding the automatic increase that's included for the local government aid. That does increase the spending cost in the out years. Our concerns are that we really think that should be debated as part of appropriation bills in the future, if they should get increases or not. That puts more stress on taxpayers as you have those spending increases increased automatically in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Paul Egger with the Minnesota Association of Realtors, and just want to start by thanking you, Madam Chair, and the committee for including retroactive federal conformity on the mortgage debt forgiveness issue. That was an important item, and there was a lot of bipartisan support for that. And I just want to briefly thank you for including an extension of the mortgage debt forgiveness provision, which Representative Earhart carried in House File 1957. Moving ahead for the current year, it's always difficult to predict what may happen at the federal level and when that may occur. So I think it's important for the state to try to get ahead of the curve on Congress and enact this provision right now. It's likely that it will be extended by Congress sometime later this spring, but regardless of what the federal government does, I think it is an important provision to pass on to Minnesota taxpayers who are in that difficult situation where they're going through a short sale or a foreclosure. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Others who'd like to testify on this omnibus tax bill? Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'd like to thank you for the volunteer recruitment and retention pilot program that you've included this year. I would like to specifically thank the authors, Representative Savick and Davids, and also Chair Lenczewski and Representative Davney, and all members for including the pilot. As you know, recruitment and retention is a huge issue for volunteer fire departments and ambulance operations across the state, and hopefully this will shed some light on some things we can do to stem the tide and keep Minnesota's very efficient volunteer ambulance and fire services in business.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Others who'd like to testify for or against provisions in the bill? Welcome to the committee. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee, my name is Stephen Baker. I'm the County Assessor in Ramsey County, and I'm here testifying on behalf of the Minnesota Association of Assessing Officers. We would first like to thank the committee and the chair and Chair Davney and the Property Tax Division for the simplification of our system and the elimination of some of the specific classes that we just heard some testimony on. That's in Article 2, Section 7, 8, and 9. We think this is an important first step on taking action on some of the recommendations of the Property Tax Working Group's report from, I think it was late 2012. So we're appreciative of that. It's, one of our general principles is that we typically oppose programs that benefit just a limited number of property taxpayers that are within the property tax system in terms of being within the rates, because they're non-transparent, they're complicated, and are difficult for people to understand. So we appreciate this step. I'd also like to just mention, just briefly, Article 2, Section 6, the section on business property. I think many of you have probably already heard other members of our association testify that we are generally in support of Scenario 3, which is not the scenario recommended by the department, which was Scenario 1, on excluding the tanks, the tanks that are used in production at the 5 specific industries. We do want to thank the committee for limiting the exemption to just those 5 industries, but our concerns are really in a couple of main areas. One, this is a change to the definition of real property, which is really one of the basic building blocks of our system. The law of unintended consequences gives us some angst. And where is it going to end? And I think we should reasonably expect there's going to be other businesses in here in future years seeking a similar expansion of this exemption, which then is going to impact property tax bases in ways that are difficult to foresee. Our shelter test for business property in Minnesota is a good, sound test. It's been well articulated by the courts. And while we still have a little bit of work to do, I think, in terms of getting everybody on the same page, we're confident that can be best accomplished through education, guidance, and some administration oversight by Department of Revenue, rather than doing a wholesale change to our definition of real property for these 5 industries. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate you being here. Further testimony. Welcome, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I'm Keith Carlson with the Minnesota Inter-County Association that consists of 9 of the larger and growing counties in greater Minnesota and 4 ring counties here in the metro area. First, I want to start off by thanking the Chair for including the clarification on the application of the sales tax exemptions to cities and counties in this bill, and also the expansion of the exemption under the sales tax on motor vehicles to city and counties road maintenance vehicles. While I appreciate that you had to do a lot of work to shoehorn the many different tax relief provisions in here, I do want to point out the delayed effective date on the clarification of the treatment of joint powers entities will disadvantage primarily smaller counties who are either required by statute or have responded to the entrees of this legislature to provide services in a more efficient or collaborative manner. Under the bill as it stands right now, they'll have to wait more than a year before they get the same sales tax exemptions that their larger brethrens receive right now for providing the same services. So if some money could be found to address that issue, I'm sure a number of counties would appreciate that. I also want to express my gratitude for fixing the one-time retroactive ag credit in the bill proposed by Representative Marquardt. Payment by the Department of Revenue is the appropriate way to go and is much more administratively. I finally also want to express some appreciation for the production property transition aid in the bill for those properties that Mr. Baker was just going through, but I do want to echo his concerns. I guarantee you other industries are going to be back here in future years asking for exactly the same exemption. So this issue is not going to go away, and you are making it more difficult for assessors to assess these properties when they have to determine whether or not these properties are part of the production process. That I'll conclude. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate you being here. Further testimony for or against this bill? Welcome again.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Doug Carnival, this time representing the National Waste and Recycling Association, and want to testify about the provision in the bill that changes the language with respect to the sales tax exemption for local governments. I appreciate your changing the language. Since you are moving to a list, a definitive list, rather than saying including but not limited to certain services, and you have included waste hauling services and landfilling services or landfilling activities, we appreciate that. However, we notice there's an omission of recycling, and that is often provided in the private sector as well. I asked my members last night, and they indicated that there are some counties that are in the recycling business, actually haul, but also have recycling centers. So there is quite a bit of competition between the private sector and the public sector on the recycling side, and we're hoping there would be an amendment to clarify that as we move forward with amendments on the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Mr. Carnival, I should tell you, some folks on the committee know, because I say this sometimes, that I tend to listen to a lot of hearings, so I know what's going on in other places that I can't be, and I listened to your testimony on this item in the Senate, and I think just going forward, I think this whole bucket of the sales tax exemption, should there be a definitive list, or should there be sort of a general comment or direction to the department, and who should be in and out, and who's competing with who in the private sector, and then I'm sure we're going to hear from Mr. Carlson on some of these as well, and we heard from Keith Carlson. I think this is going to take a lot of detailed conversations with a lot of people, and people should prepare for that. And just, I know the Senate's looking at it a different way, and the Department of Revenue is looking at it a different way, so everyone, I think, is going to have to try to work together rather than in opposition to try to make this all work. It's going to get complicated, I think, depending on where we go with it. So I appreciate your testimony, and I appreciate your other testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That I heard
Forward to
somewhere
that
else,
conversation.
which was a little different. Thank you. Mr. Carlson.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Gary Carlson. I'm with the League of Cities. And on that last point, I've talked to Mr. Carnival about that, and we are working, as you said, with the Department of Revenue, with the Senate and others. This is a tough issue to define, and I think we're all looking for that perfect definition of what private goods and services should and should not be exempted. So we're going to continue to work on that between now and conference committee, and we'll bring you some more ideas as we progress on that. On Article 1, Section 1, the pilot project for first responders and volunteer firefighters, we don't have a specific position at the League of Cities on that issue, but we think this is an issue that many of our communities have faced. Attracting and retaining volunteers has become increasingly difficult, and I hope that we can look at that program as a pilot and maybe in the future decide whether something like that would be extended statewide. Article 2, Section 5 of the bill is the LGA formula correction. As I testified in committee, we stand by that correction. When our board of directors at the League considered the LGA formula last year, as I described the bill to them, it was as it would be corrected under the Representative Lean correction here that is now included in this bill. We do realize there are some redistributions that go along with that, but we feel that was the intent of the legislature. It was the intent of my board of directors when the LGA formula came forward last year, so we do support Article 1, Section 5. Article 1, Section 6 and 7, the LGA appropriation increase, as I testified in division, Representative Simonson had that bill that at least started to increase the appropriation. We do support adding additional money to make that formula work into the future, so we appreciate including that in the bill. Article 1, Section 8, transition aid for the loss of more than 5% of tax base due to pollution control equipment. We do have positions supporting programs like that to help with the local government transitions of the phase out of that value, so we do support that. Briefly, Article 2, Section 12, changing the levy certification date. That was in Representative Loeffler's bill. We don't have a specific position, but many of my cities have taken a positive position on that particular change, Representative Loeffler, and we do support moving that back 2 weeks, especially as it relates to the fiscal disparities program. As Keith Carlson indicated in his testimony, Article 3, Section 12, all of the clarifications on the sales tax exemptions. We really appreciate you paying attention to the Representative Freiberg bill, the Representative Pugh bill, the Representative Poppy bill, and other bills. This is an important aspect to clarify the sales tax exemption. I share Keith Carlson's concerns about the delayed effective date, but we'll continue to work with you to find a way to make that effective more quickly. I've already mentioned the issue of the definition of goods and services generally provided by a private business. And then two other quick things, if you don't mind. The motor vehicle sales tax exemption for snowplows and road construction vehicles. We appreciate you bringing parity to the purchases of cities and counties to that of the townships. This has been a policy of the state since 1996 that the townships have been exempted on those purchases, and we do appreciate you adding this in the bill to bring some equity to the cities and counties. And then finally, on one other piece, the 5-year extension of the TIF knockdown rule. We do appreciate you including the language in there to help with some of those districts that have suffered under the Great Recession and development challenges during that time frame. Briefly, Madam Chair, two other things that are not in the bill. We did bring forward a bill by Representative Fabian to do workforce housing TIF projects to allow those cities that have development challenges in their communities where their businesses need additional housing. We'd like to continue to work on that issue. It doesn't solve all of the housing issues in Minnesota, but this is an important issue for many of our businesses and our local governments to find a way to incent housing development where they have those challenges. And then finally, Representative Earhart's not here, but last year we had a little street improvement district provision in the Omnibus Tax bill that did not survive the conference committee process. Representative Lenczewski added that to the bill last year, and we'd still like you to consider including the street improvement district concept to help us pay for the roads that you all know have suffered dramatically through this past winter. Madam Chair, sorry for the long testimony. We appreciate
I think there's a question for you, so okay. I'm glad you're here. Representative Davids.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if I might, I'd like to introduce in the back the FFA students from Chatfield, Lanesboro, and Plainville, Jamilville. They're teachers and some chaperones there. I just talked to them for a while, and I let them know that this was the best committee, and it is the best committee in the House of Representatives, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Right on. Welcome to the hearing. So nice to have you here. Great.
It's good to testify in front of the best committee.
Yeah, great. Further testimony. Yes, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Bo Burnson with the Association of Minnesota Counties. I know you just heard from some city and county representatives, and I do not want to repeat everything you've heard, other than to say thank you for the sales tax provisions for local governments in the bill. I do also want to thank Representative Marquardt and the committee for the changes that were made on the mechanism for how this 2014 supplemental aid credit will be paid. There's extensive work done between the committee and the department and our county officers to make sure that the provision works from a county perspective, and we're extremely grateful that you heard our concerns. I do also want to say thank you on behalf of the 11 counties that will receive a supplemental county program aid appropriation in 2014 under this bill. We had several of those counties that were set to lose 25 to 40% of their county program aid this year, and this bill will take care of it for 2014. Lastly, because the issue has been brought up in some previous testimony about the definitive list of goods and services as it relates to the local government sales tax exemption, one thing for the committee to think about, and I understand this will be an ongoing discussion, an ongoing process, is that when it comes to waste management, when it comes to recycling, these really are county-mandated functions that in certain parts of the state it's profitable for private industry to do, and they perform that function. In other parts of the state, there really is no private sector competition because it isn't profitable, and counties are performing these duties as a mandated function. So something for the committee to consider as we think about that issue. With that, thank you, members.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Ms. Nauman, welcome to the committee.
Madam Chair and members, thank you. My name is Patricia Nauman. I'm the Executive Director of Metro Cities. We represent cities in the 7-county metropolitan area, and I'll be brief. I want to first thank you for including the annual adjustment for the LGA appropriation. We appreciate the commitment that this expresses to the 2013 reforms that were passed last year, so thank you again. We also support the expansion of the homestead credit refund that is included in the bill in providing property tax relief. And I won't repeat what Mr. Carlson said, but we are also very appreciative of the local government sales tax exemption adjustments and look forward to continuing to work with you to further adjust those. We think the administrative ambiguities that have resulted with the new law are very important to resolve, and certainly we want cities to realize the full benefit of that exemption. We also support the modification to the TIF 5-year rule, and I know that I've spoken to the chair about our desire to see that maybe broadened a little bit, so we're hope that you might consider broadening that window just a little as you move forward with the bill. And I also want to express support, too, for the street improvement district provision that is not included in this bill. We hope that that might be reconsidered. One provision that we do have some concern about has to do with the statewide property tax, the exemption of that first-tier property. That does end up shifting taxes onto other properties, and that generally goes contrary to our policy. So I do want to express some concern there. But otherwise, just thank you for your time and appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate you being here. Further testifiers for or against this bill? So are we through, everybody? Okay, we're going to go into recess then. When we have the floor, we have an Atkins bill to move that's been laid over, and we want to take that up and move it. We already had a hearing on it. And we have the K-12 bill. So we'll try to start up right as soon as we're off the floor, but we're going to go in recess till then, and unless there's anyone else on public testimony. Okay, and it looks like we're going to go to room 5 when we come back. Representative Graffel.
Madam Chair, my apologies. Maybe you spoke with Representative Davids already. Is there a reason we can't start marking up the tax bill right now?
Well, I made a commitment to a number of people that I didn't think we would get through it by 2, and some folks are not able to be here voting because they're voting other places.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we could, I guess one thing we could do is we could get my author's amendment out there if it's done, but I don't know if it's done. Because folks, does anyone have a comment? I don't think it's done. I think we'll just recess. People that way can get a bite to eat because who knows how long we'll be here before they get off, before we go to the floor. So with that, members, we are in recess. Thank you.